Did Sirhan act alone in killing Senator Robert Kennedy? Or is the second gunman conspiracy theory actually true? Decades later, the events during those critical seconds are still being debated.
Pattern looks like a gunshot.
These forensic audio experts are analyzing an audio tape that has been lost to history, sitting unnoticed in an archive for decades. Hear it broadcast for the first time.
We're looking for a lot of energy.
Will it reveal more gunshots than Sirhan's 8-shot revolver could have fired? And will this firearms expert be able to fire the same type of gun as quickly as the shots heard on the tape? Find out next on Conspiracy Test. Almost as soon as Senator Robert Kennedy was shot in 1968, disturbing reports have led many people to wonder, was more than one shooter responsible? Kennedy friend and supporter Paul Schrade believes Sirhan did not act alone.
Witnesses said they saw another gun. The police department never picked up the guard's gun, never picked up any other gun that might have been in that room that night.
For those who believe in the second gunman theory, the failure to collect a security guard's gun is just one of many problems they have with the official findings. They feel that extra bullets at the crime scene, controversial autopsy results, and destroyed evidence all point to a second gunman and a cover-up by the Los Angeles Police Department. And now there may be irrefutable proof. Audio expert Phil Van Prague has analyzed the lost RFK recording more than anyone else in the world. The FBI analyzed it in 1969 and dismissed it. In 2004, it was rediscovered in a California archive. Today, modern technology is unlocking its secrets.
There's a lot of conjecture, and there always will be, as to how many actual shots were fired. However, there had to have been more than one weapon involved.
On the other side of the RFK debate, government officials and other experts can't believe a conspiracy is even being considered. Lynn Compton was one of the original prosecutors in the RFK assassination case.
We went over everything possible and left no stone unturned. As to Sirhan himself, there's no question that it was an open and shut case. He was grabbed with the gun still in his hand.
Daryl Gates was the LAPD duty chief that night.
We didn't think we would ever be part of that conspiracy because our investigation right from the very beginning was very, very intense, very complete.
To settle this long debate, we'll perform two exclusive
It was very, very intense, very complete.
To settle this long debate, we'll perform two exclusive conspiracy tests. For the first time on television, independent audio experts will analyze the lost audio tape of the RFK assassination. Will they find more shots than Sirhan's 8-shot revolver could have fired? And shooting range tests will either confirm or deny the second gunman conspiracy in America's third major assassination of the 1960s. In the spring of 1968, the United States finds itself in a time of social and political turmoil. The country is divided about the war in Vietnam, and the push for civil rights ignites racial tension. Many people feel that Bobby Kennedy brings hope to a divided nation.
I have to have some differences of some importance with the administration in connection with Vietnam. Oh, yeah!
Just a few years removed from his brother's assassination in Dallas, and only 2 months after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. in Memphis, Bobby Kennedy continues the message of nonviolence and unity. Kennedy's progressive policies ensure that he has no shortage of potential enemies. Just after midnight on June 5th, inside a crowded ballroom in the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, Senator Kennedy speaks to his hopeful supporters after winning the California Democratic presidential primary.
My thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there. Thank you very much.
As Kennedy and his staff leave the podium to conduct a press conference in another room, a last-minute decision is made to cut through the pantry area of the kitchen. As the senator enters the pantry, he stops to shake hands with kitchen workers.
And I can just remember thinking, this is what this campaign is all about. You can just see the hope and the respect that these guys have for him, the way they wanted to meet him.
When Kennedy turns to walk away, a man by the name of Sirhan Sirhan fires a gun at the senator from close range. The senator is shot, and so is Paul Schrade.
I thought I was being electrocuted. That was my first thought before I passed out. Being electrocuted because of wet floors, television, cameras, cables.
We need a doctor here.
Several other people in the pantry are hit during the chaos. As Sirhan fires his 8-shot .22 caliber revolver, hotel staffer Carl Uecker grabs the assassin's arm and pushes Sirhan onto a food preparation table. More people surge into the pantry, including friends and unofficial bodyguards, Olympic decathlete Rafer Johnson and football star Rosie Greer.
I stepped over two guys, and there were people struggling with Sirhan. So I went forward, and there was gun waving, and so I went and grabbed his legs and pulled him up on this metal table. And I locked his legs. So I went forward, and there was gun waving, and so I went and grabbed his legs and pulled him up on this metal table. And I locked his legs so he couldn't move.
Although one bullet passed harmlessly through Kennedy's clothes, the senator still has 3 gunshot wounds, including a severe wound to his head. He is taken to a hospital by ambulance. Rookie LAPD officer Arthur Placentia and his partner fight an angry crowd to get Sirhan to the police car. Once inside, Placentia sits next to Sirhan on the way to the Rampart station and reads him his rights.
So I'm talking to him, I'm not getting any response from him. So I had my flashlight, I jabbed him underneath his chin. And I said, hey, I'm talking to you. And that's when he looked me straight in the eye and he said, I'll remember 3909. Well, at the time, 3909 was my policeman badge number, 3909.
At the Rampart station, a calm and collected Sirhan is interrogated. The 24-year-old Palestinian-born Sirhan provides no information, but a diary found at his home claims he killed Kennedy due to RFK's continuing support of Israel since the 1967 Six-Day War, which had started on June 5th. The assassination was exactly 1 year to the day. 26 hours after the shooting, Kennedy's press secretary Frank Mankiewicz makes the dreaded announcement.
Senator Robert Francis Kennedy died at 1:44 a.m. today, June 6, 1968.
The Los Angeles Police Department's investigation, with assistance from the FBI and Secret Service, takes 8 months. In the end, the results remain the same as they had been in the first moments after the shooting.
There's not a person that walked away from that investigation when it was finally wound up that put any credence in any contention that there was some third party involved or some other person.
The trial begins in February 1969. Sirhan's lawyer offers a temporary insanity defense. Details of the LAPD's investigation are not challenged. On April 17, 1969, the jury convicts Sirhan Sirhan of first-degree murder. He is sentenced to death, which later changes because of state law to a life sentence. It appears like the LAPD had exactly what they wanted, an open and shut case. That is, until people began to question the quality of the investigation.
They didn't botch a few things. Their behavior was scandalous.
Next, hear from witnesses and experts who believe that there was a conspiracy surrounding the RFK assassination.
What if procedures weren't...
Recovery Times Channel.
My thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there.
Moments after winning the California primary, Robert Kennedy's life was cut tragically short in the kitchen pantry of the Ambassador Hotel. Decades later, the debate over how many gunmen were involved still rages. The purported lone gunman, Sirhan Sirhan, fired a .22 caliber revolver, a gun that could only hold 8 shots. But many people at the scene believe more than 8 shots were fired. Roger Katz was following the crowd of people into the pantry area when he first heard the gunfire.
Heard the first shot and then saw the flash inside the kitchen area. There were what appeared to be 2 shots. Then I heard what sounded like several more shots. The succession of the shots seemed too rapid to be one person.
Journalist Ted Chirac, host and writer of the 1973 documentary The Second Gun, is one of the foremost experts on the RFK case. He has interviewed countless witnesses. Many of them claim to have heard more than 8 shots.
Harry Evans says to me, I had a habit of counting sounds since I was a little boy, and I counted distinctly 9 shots.
Former president of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, Robert Joling, also believes there were more than 8 shots fired, and that a simple bullet count proves it.
Here we have 4 shots into Senator Kennedy's clothing. 5 other people got shot. That's 9. Sirhan had an 8-shot revolver.
But for those who believe in the second gunman conspiracy, the most convincing piece of evidence is the senator's autopsy results. The autopsy was performed by Los Angeles coroner Dr. Thomas Noguchi. Noguchi's findings did not lend themselves to the open and shut case the LAPD was hoping for. Noguchi found deeply embedded powder burns behind Kennedy's ear and gunpowder residue in his hair, indicating that the fatal shot must have been fired from a distance no greater than 1.5 inches.
LAPD said there are 5 best witnesses in the case. All said the gun, not Sirhan, the gun, had to be anywhere from 1.5 to 3 feet from Kennedy's body.
Tests reveal that adding just a few inches of distance leads to much smaller powder burns. Dr. Noguchi was asked, is there any way those powder burns could have come from 1.5 feet away?
In this case, of course, the abundance of powder burn embedded deep in the tissue, it is scientifically highly unlikely.
Under suspicious circumstances, he was cited for being neglectful in the autopsy of Kennedy and fired from his position.
I read it from cover to cover and found it to be the most thorough, complete autopsy protocol I'd ever seen prior to that time.
Eventually, Noguchi was reinstated to his position as county coroner. 2 other shots entered Kennedy from the back.
Gunshot wound number 2 was found in the armpit, and it was a through-and-through gunshot wound, and the direction was back to front.
Carl Euchre escorted Kennedy through the pantry and stood between the senator and Sirhan when the shots were fired. Journalist Ted Chirac asked, would it have been possible for Sirhan to have fired from behind the senator, hitting him in the back? Journalist Ted Chirac asked, would it have been possible for Sirhan to have fired from behind the senator, hitting him in the back?
This was completely impossible because Sirhan was in front of me and he didn't have no way to shoot from behind me.
According to the autopsy, the shots also entered from a very low angle. No one reported seeing Sirhan in that position. Would it have been possible for someone else to have fired from that angle?
There was a guard standing immediately to the senator's right and behind, holding the senator's right elbow in his left hand. And there was a runner for one of the news media that night, Don Shulman, who said he saw the guard pull his gun, fired it 3 times, and hit the senator all 3 times.
He shot. Just then the guard, who was standing behind Kennedy, took out his gun, and he fired also. The next thing I knew is that Kennedy was shot 3 times.
Moonlighting as a security guard, Thane Eugene Caesar was hired that day to work security for the event. He was behind Kennedy when the shots were fired.
The guard, in the meantime, after the shooting, had gone outside. It was gone for 10 minutes, came back in and picked up his tie that was now lying on the floor where Senator Kennedy had been lying.
Caesar's story changed several times after the event.
Now I have it on tape that Caesar admitted to me 3 times what he didn't tell the police, the FBI. He told different stories, that he pulled his gun instantly. It was no accident. Those were professional shots.
The gun issued to Caesar by the security company was a .38 caliber. The bullets recovered at the crime scene were all .22s. But since the LAPD never looked at any other gun besides Sirhan's, no one knows for certain what type of gun Caesar was carrying. He did own a .22 caliber revolver, information he didn't initially share.
Caesar lied to the district attorney and the police and said that he sold the gun before the assassination, when I had proof on a receipt that he sold it after the fact, in September the 6th, 1968.
The LAPD's failure to collect any other guns besides Sirhan's is just one of many problems critics have with the investigation. Since the LAPD did not confiscate Caesar's gun, they could only test Sirhan's gun to see if it was the gun used to kill the senator. Chief criminalist Dwayne Wolfer claimed they were able to match bullets from the crime scene to Sirhan's gun. After the trial, it was discovered the serial number on the envelope containing the test bullets from the gun used to convict Sirhan did not match that of Sirhan's gun. The LAPD claimed the envelope was simply mislabeled. Many others believe the wrong gun was tested. And this photo, taken by the Associated Press, shows 2 police officers looking at 2 possible bullet holes that have been circled by another officer.
The police officer circled it, put his initials in it. Tom Noguchi went up there and pointed to the 2 of them with his fingers. When people started talking about those didn't exist, just sort of smile and say it's funny. And the FBI also took photographs of them.
Later, the LAPD took x-rays of the center divider and also took the center divider itself into evidence.
That center divider had been destroyed.
This investigation wasn't botched, it was deliberately covered up.
Next, witnesses and experts on both sides face off to debate the most controversial aspects of the case.
This is Jerry. Jerry was born without taste buds.
Putting you on the red carpet and in the know at Silver Dots.
The country wants to move in a different direction. We want to deal with our own problems within our own country, and we want peace in Vietnam.
After 4 decades, the debate still rages over who killed Democratic presidential hopeful Robert Kennedy. One side believes a lone gunman named Sirhan Sirhan was to blame. The other side believes a second gunman took part. Later in the show, our audio and ballistic tests will try to settle this debate. It's a puzzle with many pieces.
There really wasn't time for somebody to take a handgun out and fire off more than 6 or 8 shots. It's just not possible.
I believe there were more than 8 shots fired. In fact, I'm sure of it. 2 were in the divider to the swinging doors in the pantry. 2 were in a wall panel, 1 out of the steps to the stage.
With 6 victims hit by a purported 8 bullets, finding 5 additional bullets would raise the count to 13.
I'm convinced that only 8 bullets were fired, and a very thorough examination of the scene and a thorough examination of where those bullets ultimately landed.
The debate over Dr. Tom Noguchi's autopsy of Kennedy also continues.
The trajectory of the bullets would indicate that Senator Kennedy was shot from behind.
We have to reconstruct what happens to a body, how it turns, and how it leans forward. We don't believe the coroner did that.
Sirhan accosted Kennedy from the front and got no closer than 1 to 3 feet, according to all witnesses in the pantry. So somebody had to shoot him from behind. That means that Sirhan could not have gotten off the fatal shot.
And what about the powder burns on the back of Kennedy's head? Noguchi determined the gun couldn't have been more than 1.5 inches away.
In terms of witnesses who put the gun that close, nobody came forward.
Witnesses there were not expert in making those determinations, but our experts looked at it, all of that, very, very carefully.
But skeptics feel the only thing the LAPD was careful about was how to obscure the truth.
Right after the assassination, the major concern of the LAPD was, we don't want another Dallas. In my opinion, this investigation wasn't botched, it was deliberately covered up.
We'd have to corrupt an entire department, have to corrupt the FBI and the Secret Service who assisted us in this investigation. How you would do that, I have no idea.
More questions were raised after the LAPD's own reports proved they had destroyed evidence. Besides incinerating photos, they had also destroyed a door divider and ceiling tiles, which may have contained bullet holes.
They admitted destroying 2,400 photographs. Nobody seems to have come forward with pictures of Sirhan firing or Robert Kennedy being hit as he was standing or any of the rest of us. There could have been those kind of photographs in those files, but they're gone.
And why were the door frames and ceiling tiles destroyed?
We kept them around for a long, long time, and we finally said, this case has gone to court. The man has been convicted. You can't keep junk around forever. They took up a lot of room.
And then there's the problem of the serial number on the LAPD's ballistics report.
Dwayne Wolfer, the criminals for the LAPD crime lab, had drawn the conclusion that the bullets recovered were fired from Sirhan's gun. And it turned out that he examined a gun that had a different serial number than Sirhan's.
It was a simple clerical error. He wrote down the serial number of the test gun rather than Sirhan's gun.
Mayor, your audience just sent me a message that we've been here too long already.
Now, new evidence is injected into the ongoing debate. Hear the dramatic recording, never broadcast before, that reveals how many gunshots were fired during the RFK assassination. Next on Conspiracy Test.
3 Times Channel.
Official investigators believe Sirhan acted alone, using an 8-shot revolver to assassinate Robert Kennedy. But a recently uncovered audio tape of the shots fired that night may prove that more than 8 shots rang out. For the first time on television, forensic audio experts will analyze the tape and determine how many shots were really fired in a groundbreaking conspiracy test. Warsaw, Poland is an unlikely place to look for clues into the RFK assassination. But that's where you will find Stanislaw Przynski, cafe owner and former journalist.
You see this slim guy? That's me. And detaching the tape recorder
He was at the Ambassador Hotel that night in 1968, on leave from a Canadian newspaper to work on a book about American politics.
You can see me there, detaching the microphone.
Przynski used what was at the time a fairly new piece of technology, an audio cassette recorder.
You can see it in my left arm, leaning down, picking up the tape recorder in my left.
When Kennedy finished his speech, Przynski retrieved his equipment.
And I'm moving to my left there. I was just following Robert Kennedy and the crowd. I suddenly heard a cry, lots of people shouting. So I tried to hold people back as they were rushing towards me, but I moved forward, and then I found Bobby Kennedy lying on the ground, wounded and looking with his eyes open, but without an expression.
The Polish reporter didn't realize he had recorded anything special during the shooting. Days later, Przynski returned to Canada. Then in 1969, Canadian police requested a copy of the tape on the FBI's behalf. The FBI analyzed the tape, finding nothing of note with the equipment available back then. But today, this engineer has the technology to do a much more thorough analysis, and the results may shock you. Phil Van Prague is an electrical engineer who has worked in the audio industry for over 35 years. His impressive collection of recording equipment includes decks he's built himself. A journalist introduced Van Prague to Przynski's recordings in early 2005.
The very first time I heard it, I was not impressed at all, but I thought, well, I'll take this back with me and put it on my instruments and just see what's there. And when I did that, that spark was ignited.
But Van Prague's copy was of a very low quality. The best-known version of the Przynski recording is part of the RFK collection at the California State Archives in Sacramento. Van Prague convinced the director to make their master tape available so he could obtain the best possible copy. Actually, several copies, both digital and analog.
I just did the one playback of that tape and made 5 simultaneous recordings to get as most detailed a perspective and multiple perspectives as you can.
The audience just sent me a message that we've been here too long already.
To get as most detailed a perspective and multiple perspectives as you can.
The audience just sent me a message that we've been here too long already.
Van Prague spent months analyzing his master recordings with different types of decks, electronic equipment, and computer programs. His results?
I have located approximately 13 shot sounds. Now, I cannot absolutely guarantee that 13 is the correct number. However, it is greater than 8, I can certainly say that. Now, within the 13 captured shot sounds, there are a couple of instances of what I call double shots, and that is 2 shots that occur so closely together such that they couldn't really have come from a single weapon. It simply isn't possible to fire a weapon that fast. 13 identified.
If Van Prague's results are accurate, the official version of the RFK assassination will crumble. Now, in the ultimate conspiracy test, an independent team of forensic audio specialists look to settle the second gunman debate. At Audio Engineering Associates in Pasadena, California, just 2 miles from where Sirhan Sirhan lived, Phil Van Prague arrives with his master recordings. He hands them off to company owner Wes Dooley and forensic audio engineer Paul Pegas. But why does Van Prague need to be here in person for this independent test?
It was important to bring not only the master recordings that I made, but also the machines on which those recordings were made, so as to present as accurate a reproduction of those recordings as possible.
They load one of the analog masters of the Pruszynski recording into their computer system, then one of the digital masters. Van Prague then orients Dooley and Pegas to the events of that night and the location and movements of Pruszynski.
He was holding his recorder there in his left arm.
Knowing how he and his microphone were moving as the shots were fired is critical to an accurate analysis of the recording.
This is Pruszynski at the podium.
Now I see he's going over
Right.
towards the pantry.
Proceeding down to the edge of the stage, walking down the stairs, and at this point we hear a thump just as he's beginning to enter the kitchen pantry area, and we know from Pruszynski's recording that that is the point where the shots were fired.
That thump or thud can also be heard on the audio from the network news cameras, which were at the back of the ballroom.
It was probably someone bumping the podium or one of the microphones or whatever that came through the PA system in the embassy room. So we have a very good synchronization point, visual sighting of Pruszynski, just as he's entering the kitchen pantry area, and those network feeds.
Getting closer, like bop, bop.
Now Dooley and Pegas work alone to analyze the recording in more detail.
Where's the scream?
Very end, she screams.
Okay.
Pegas also creates an audio spectrograph of the recording. This displays the changing audio frequencies, accurate to 1,000th of a second. It's a time-consuming job, using a combination of the amazing ability of the human ear and computer software. By the end of the first day, the team at Audio Engineering Associates is very intrigued. But they need more time. The analysis will continue tomorrow. Next, the results of our groundbreaking conspiracy test. Did Sirhan Sirhan work alone in killing Robert F. Kennedy in 1968? Or was there more than one gunman? Day 2 of our conspiracy test looks to answer that question once and for all. Forensic audio experts Wes Dooley and Paul Pegas of Audio Engineering Associates resumed their work.
First, a question of authenticity.
They're analyzing an audio tape that was sitting in an archive for decades, unnoticed until 2004. It's the only known recording that clearly captures the gunshot sounds during the shooting. Will this conspiracy test reveal more shots than Sirhan's 8-round revolver could hold?
Where we have the vertical line of energy here, we have 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, 5, 6, maybe 7, 8, 9. There's a lot of shots potentially here.
Dooley and Pegas use a computer program that allows them to slow the playback without changing the pitch of what they're listening to.
So definitely there's 2 shots here. Bang, bang, bang.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first shot at 360. Goes 360. The second shot, 120 milliseconds. That's pretty close.
That's fast.
Is it possible that the second sound is just a ricochet?
22 is about 1,000 feet per second. So if it's 20 feet from one side of the room to the other, that's only 20 milliseconds. So I'd say that this is not a ricochet. This seems to be another shot. I think we're onto something here.
Wes Dooley also sent a digital version of the recording to a forensic audio and ballistics expert in Denmark the previous day.
So he felt there was 10 different places where it looked like there were shots. So we're getting very similar results.
With 2 independent tests showing at least 10 shots on the Brzezinski tape, evidence for the second gunman conspiracy is mounting. And what about the shots that are only 120 milliseconds apart? For the answer, we conducted a second conspiracy test. Firearms expert and author Phil Spangenberger has worked in the gun business for over 35 years. He's firing the exact same model of revolver that Sirhan Sirhan used.
The Ivory Johnson Cadet revolver is an 8-shot revolver, 22 caliber. It's a low-end gun. It's not accurate past a few feet.
So just how fast can Spangenberger fire the Ivory Johnson Cadet? To find out, we used an electronic timer made specifically for firearms testing. First, he fired all 8 rounds as quickly as possible. After several tries, the fastest time is 2.93 seconds, an average of 366 milliseconds between shots, far longer than the 120 millisecond goal. What if Spangenberger concentrates on firing only 2 shots as quickly as possible?
5.5.
0.55 seconds or 550 milliseconds is as fast as he can fire.
When I hear 120 milliseconds between shots, that sounds incredibly fast. I think anybody with any experience would realize that that had to be more than one firearm.
Several tests of the Brzezinski tape and 2 different firing range tests all point to a second gunman conspiracy. But another audio expert actually claims the Brzezinski recording supports the single gun theory. See his results next on Conspiracy Test.
Five Men, tomorrow at 8 on the Discovery Times channel.
You see this slim guy? That's me.
Former journalist Stanislaw Brzezinski is the only known person to record the shots fired during the assassination of Robert Kennedy. Now his audio recording may rewrite history. Audio engineer Phil Van Prague's analysis of the recording and our independent conspiracy test results indicate that Sirhan Sirhan could not have acted alone.
The Brzezinski recording is quite valuable. It gives us greater than 8-shot sounds, and that relates back to the capacity of the Ivory Johnson weapon that Sirhan had, which had a maximum capacity of 8 shots.
And our firing range expert proved it's impossible to fire that weapon as fast as some of the shots on the recording. But not everybody agrees about the sounds on the Brzezinski tape. Anti-conspiracy author Mel Ayton also obtained a copy of the recording and had it tested by an acoustics company in London.
I believe that their results, which proved that there were no more than 8 shots fired in the pantry of the Ambassador Hotel, will stand.
Independent acoustics expert Philip Harrison performed the analysis for Ayton.
Given the context of what occurred that evening and the surrounding material on the tape, I think it's safe to conclude that there are 7 shots from Sirhan's gun. There is a possibility of an 8th shot within there, but its exact location isn't clear.
But Harrison was working from a single copy of Van Prague's recording from the California State Archives, not from Van Prague's masters. Harrison was also not aware of the details surrounding the events of that night at the Ambassador. Most importantly, he did not know the location of Brzezinski's microphone and how it was moving when the shots were fired.
Any information relating to where Mr. Brzezinski was standing at the time or any movements he made during the sequence of shots would, to some degree, have been of assistance.
With these important differences, it's no surprise that Wes Dooley and Paul Pegas found more shots, as did their colleague in Denmark. If Sirhan Sirhan didn't act alone, and if the second gunman conspiracy is true, then who could the second gunman be? People have speculated that part-time security guard Thane Eugene Caesar could have fired the fatal shots from behind. Caesar was armed and revealed in an exclusive audio interview with Ted Chirac that he was no fan of Kennedy's policies.
I definitely wouldn't have voted for Bobby Kennedy because he had the same ideas as John did, and I think John sold the country down the road. He gave it to the commies, he gave it to whoever he wanted to. He literally gave it to the minority. And one of these days, at the rate they're going, there's going to be civil war in this country. It's going to be the white against the black, and the only thing I'd say is the black will never win. Days, at the rate they're going, there's going to be civil war in this country. It's going to be the white against the black, and the only thing I'd say is the black will never win.
A colleague of Aiden's, Dan Moldea, arranged 2 truth tests for Caesar, the most recent in 1994.
Thane Caesar was polygraphed by one of the best polygraph experts in America. He was exonerated. Thane Caesar was telling the truth.
However, Chirac claims that Caesar failed a psychological stress examination that Chirac arranged in 1978. Today, Caesar maintains his innocence while choosing to make his home in the Philippines. Other conspiracy theories claim the CIA was tied to the assassination of the senator and his brother.
I think the major problem was that President Kennedy didn't follow up and support the Bay of Pigs invasion. Many in the CIA were appalled that they would give up their right to assassinate Castro.
Besides the CIA, Senator Kennedy had many other potential enemies.
Bob took on the mob. He had enemies. Jimmy Hoffa hated his guts because he put the Teamsters on the spot because of the relationship with the mob and because of his collaboration and support of Dr. Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement that white racists would have fit in for Robert Kennedy.
Knowing the stakes were high during the turbulent 1960s, Kennedy supporters were some of the most loyal and perhaps the most hopeful of any in the history of American politics.
We were more concerned about electing him than we are our own personal lives.
I was so full of hope for America if we could get this man into the leadership position, and I felt that Bobby Kennedy would have made a great president.
Now, decades later, will the continuing respect for Robert Kennedy and the new evidence of a second gunman lead to a reopening of the RFK assassination?
My feeling about the evidence that's come up with here is you can't back away from real stuff. It merits closer examination, and as a citizen of this country, it has to be looked at.
Even some experts who don't believe in the second gunman theory want the facts re-examined.
It should be reopened if only to lay to rest the continuing carping about minor points involved in this case, and to establish once and for all that Sirhan Sirhan was found guilty for the right reasons, and he is incarcerated at Corcoran Prison in California for the right reasons.
Is the new evidence from the Brzezinski audio tape another minor point or a major breakthrough? Only time will tell.